allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Ackermite, roll call, please.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mrs. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Conley?
Here.
Mr. Myers?
Here.
Mr. Stahl?
Here.
Dr. Chesney?
Here.
Mr. Brightfield?
Here. Right, that brings us to the approval of tonight's agenda. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Dr. Gray, Shining Stars.
We're going to begin tonight with Mr. Phil Johnson. Phil from our high school choral program, and he has some special guests here tonight to entertain the crowd. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. This is Pandemonium. It's a new student-run a cappella group, and they just wanted to get you guys kicked off on your meeting with some good spirits. This is an arrangement of Superstition, arranged by Parker Garman, featuring a number of different soloists.
Very superstitious writings on the wall. Very superstitious ladders about to fall. Pretty muscle baby, ba-da-da-da-da. Broke the law. Ba-da-da-da-da. 7 years of red love. Ba-da-da-da-da. Good things are good. Ba-da-da-da-da. When you believe in things you don't understand, you suffer. Superstition ain't the way. Ba-da-da-da-da. Oh, very superstition. Oh, wash your face away. Very superstition. Do all that. Oh, keep me in your bed. Keep me going strong. No, you don't want to say. That is my song. When you believe things you don't understand, you suffer. Superstition either way. Oh, very superstition. Oh, say,
Thank you, Mr. Johnson and Pandemonium. Unbelievable as always. Our second shining star tonight, we had Mr. Dan Ayton from Multi Intermediate, and he's going to be talking a little bit about one of our students that did a really good thing. So, Mr. Ayton.
All right. Well, as you know, every year with fifth grade camp, we have a great fundraiser with Little Caesar Pizza, and for years on end, we've been not one of the highest grossing in the state of Michigan, but in the nation. This year, we were lucky enough to have Mr. Jack Milton here, was our highest seller. Great job. We sold 36 kits. To give you a little perspective, 19 kits pays for your kid experience. He sold for himself and for a whole other person on scholarship. So, Mr. Jack Milton is our shining star from Maltby today.
And that's all we have under Shining Star.
Okay, this brings us to our first call to the public. If anyone wishes to address the board, please step up to the podium. We do ask that you limit it to 3 minutes. Please state your name, address, and Dr. Chesney will give you an identifier as to time with a yellow and red card. Before we do get to that point, we are aware, the district is aware of the community concern about a student matter. The board will not discuss matters concerning students in a public meeting. We will be following the advice of our attorneys and assure we protect the rights of all concerned parties. Students have federally protected privacy rights, so the board will not comment on this matter and cautions audience members to not disclose any personally identifying information, including names of any students. So if anyone wishes to address the board, please feel free to come up to the podium. Sure. Yes, please.
All right, my name is Ashley, and I'm here on behalf of my daughter and 2 other girls. Today is my daughter's 14th birthday, and I spent her birthday in several places, like New York, and mostly at her favorite restaurants and things like that. I'm very sad that I have to spend her 14th birthday standing here asking you for what I have to ask you today, but if you guys are into granting birthday wishes, you know, help her out. So my goal here today is to talk about how much of a great year she's having compared to last year, and we've talked back and forth about last year, and this year's been much different. She just made the cheer team. She's very excited about that. She's been doing really well. My daughter's been in Brighton area schools for her entire life. She was the last graduating class of Miller, and we want to continue to be part of Brighton schools, and we want to continue to be part of a community that is so great and so supportive and what's known to be a very safe place, and we want to continue helping that be a safe place, and that's why I'm standing here today. It is my understanding that the board has the right to expel students for certain acts, and I'm here asking you to do so without naming names. But I have gone through the bylaws and policies, and 8 times it is mentioned in there that for criminal sexual conduct, it is grounds for expulsion. And the policies and procedures following how to report and how to stop the retaliation and things like that. And I would really, and then it's followed by the education and training that we're giving teachers. I feel like this was kind of a surprise to us in the community, and it's been a learning experience not only for me, but for you guys as board members and the school teachers and principals and everybody else involved. And I am here asking for a change and for your support and help. And I obviously am very limited on what I can say, but I think you all know who I am. And I don't believe it's safe for Brighton area schools, specifically Brighton High School, to have sexual offenders at a tier 3 roaming the halls, especially serial sexual offenders. And I know for my daughter specifically, her PTSD and anxiety would make it so we would have to pull her from Brighton schools, and we do not want to do that. She is growing so much right now, and she's doing so well. And she's asked me so many times, because of actions that were taken by schools and the justice system and everybody else, why did I come forward? Why did I even do this? And I'm standing here still fighting, trying to show her why she did it, because it was the right thing to do, and it was brave, and it was hard, and the right thing is not always easy. And that's not an easy lesson to learn at 14, but she's taken it on, and the biggest concern of hers is the safety of others. And I will not stop until I can guarantee that they are safe, and I will do anything I can, and I'm willing to work with you guys personally on any information, any level that I can, and help you out as much as I can. Working with this, I know it's a sensitive issue, I know it's a difficult issue to handle, but it's an issue that needs to be talked about because it's something that's happening, it's something that did happen, and I think that girls need to feel, and boys alike, need to feel comfortable coming forward and talking to teachers and their peers and everybody else. And the shame, stigma, and everything else that's attached to it needs to go away, and they need to know that we're here and we support them. I thank you guys so much for listening to me, and I hope that together we can work together and do the right thing and guarantee a safer school for all the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the board this evening in first call to the public? Okay, seeing none, that will close first call to the public and move us into the superintendent report. Dr. Gray.
We begin with our student representative. Tonight we have our student rep from the Bridge. And you are welcome to go.
Hello, my name is Devin Haney. I'm a senior this year at the Bridge and also the student representative. Our leadership group, Mayo Stars, will be attending the fall kickoff event in Independence, Michigan tomorrow. Students at this event will connect with other alternative students and participate in team building activities. Wednesday evening, November 15th, is the Youth Connection Services Homeless Awareness event. Art reflection theme of homelessness from schools in the country, including the Bridge, will be displayed. The event is open to the public from 4 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. at the Howell Opera House. Students participating this year are Paige Aldrich, Savannah Anderson, Tony Hogg, Willow Hutchins, Cara Maxwell, Lindsay Ratliff, and Dominique Van Over. We are almost to the end of our first trimester. We have several fall graduates. Our winter trimester starts on the 4th of December. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Well done. Secondly, Dr. Gistinger has our guests from the auditing firm of Manor Stairs tonight, and she can go ahead and introduce them.
Yes, good evening, board and community members. We have Jeff Strauss from Manor Harrison & Ellis here to present our annual financial report as of June 30th, 2017.
All right, well, good evening. I do have the audit report. If you guys have your packets, it's going to be the thicker document and then 2 other quick letters that I'll go over. Before I get into that too much, I just want to thank Greg, the board, Maria, Marcus Leon, Finance. They do a phenomenal job. We come in here and I never get tired of telling the story that Brighton has to tell last few years, and we'll hit on some of those points within the report. But I'll get started and kind of run through the key pieces of that for you guys today. Starting on page 4, that's going to be the auditor's report. The main page you guys want to look at is going to be the top of page 5, where it does state the opinion that our CPA firm did issue on the financial statement of Brighton, and that is an unmodified, a clean opinion, no issues whatsoever. Going into that, we start on page 7, which is going to be the MD&A. I'm not going to go through the MD&A page by page, but I do want to stop on page 13 because it just tells an awesome story of the district. I mean, you can see all the way 15 years back, but where the big changes happened is really 2013 was probably the lowest point from a general fund deficit standpoint, or around $8.5 million in the deficit in the general fund. At that same point, we had enrollment that was about the lowest point we had just over 6,000 as well. And since then, the district has added $12 million to the general fund balance, with an anticipated $2 million for the 17-18 year as well. I mean, that's a turnaround that, I mean, just unbelievable. And every time I see it, it's just really awesome. And Greg and Maria were so integral in that happening. A lot of tough decisions had to be made in those early years from cut standpoint, renegotiations, and then they took a huge leap of faith on the shared services program that really no district had attempted at this level. And you guys are seeing, I mean, the financial benefits of that at this point, and I don't see any reason why that should change anytime in the near future. I mean, really phenomenal job. Moving on to page 16, I just want to touch on the full accrual level of the financial statements real quick. So this is where we do put liabilities like long-term debt. We put the net pension liability on the books. And the reason I want to touch base on this real quick is because if you look in the liability section, there's $98 million liability there. What that relates to is the net pension liability that every district is dealing with. And we have a whole footnote that's probably about 7 or 8 pages to really detail the complexity of it. But long story short, there's about a $25 million or $1 billion shortfall in the net pension liability for the entire MIPSERS program. And a few years ago, we put that on the face of the financial statements for all districts. And this is why you guys see you have a total net position deficit of $116 million, almost exclusively related to that $98 million net pension liability. The reason why it's a little bit bigger deal this year than it was in the past is they haven't included the OPEB or the healthcare portion in the past. That's going to come on the books next year. That's going to be about 35, maybe 40% of that net pension liability. So right off the bat, we know we're going to probably add about another $30 million related to healthcare benefits that really haven't been shown here in the past. Page 17 shows the full accrual statement of activities. You can see there were expenditures or expenses of $90 million, offset by $89 million, $89.234 million in revenue. So had a little bit less coming in from a full accrual level. But that doesn't tell you exactly what's happening at the general fund. That we did add about $1.2 million at the general fund level. A little bit I want to go over on the net pension liability. Starts on page 42. This provides really a little bit more description than what you might have seen just by looking at the statement of deposition. If you go to page 45, you can actually see that 67, almost $60 billion total net pension liability, offset by only $43 billion in assets or investments. And Brighton's proportionate share of that is only 0.39%, but that still is accounting for $98 million. I also want you to turn real quickly to page 48, and this shows how big an estimate that is. So even though the actuary has come up with that $98 million number, it could be based on a 1% change, or if you're getting a slightly higher rate of return, it could be $74 million. if you were getting 1% less of a rate of return on those investments. And this is the full NIPSER's ORS program. That liability could be $127 million. The reason why I point that out this year is they've already said they were going to take that rate from 7.5%, well, 8%, and drop it down to 7.5%. So we already know that liability is going to increase even more. So what they originally thought of a 22-year plan to pay that off, they're kind of going in the wrong direction on making those payments. So that liability is really just increasing rather than decreasing like they would have liked. Now the main page I really want to discuss on the entire financial statement is going to be page 54. This is what we would call our required supplementary information. It's the budget to actual. We budgeted at the general fund level for just under $69 million in revenue. We came in at $68.8 million in revenue. The biggest reason for that was, for that difference of about $190,000 really relates to that shared service program. What happened there was you guys have been so successful that the MD&E has kind of been critical a little bit of what's been generated out of it, and they wanted a little bit more of that money back. I think that money is actually not going to have to stay at the MD&E, but that's really what caused this budget variance. It wasn't anything that you guys did from a budget standpoint. It was a last-second change by the MD&E that was really changing what they thought you guys should be receiving on the shared service from an FTE standpoint. Total expenditures were budgeted at $67.2 million. You guys came in at $67.5. And if you follow that all the way down to the bottom, you guys did add $1.2 million to your general fund balance, up from 2.3, ending at 3.5 million. This is a big deal this year. You guys have been adding the past few years, but what this gives you is 5% of your general fund balance. It's 5% of your total revenues. And why that's important is because it gets you in your first year out of the early warning legislation where they really require schools to have a 5% fund balance. You need 2 years before you can end some of the special reporting, and once you guys are above that 5% next year as well, you'll be out of that, probably for good. So, that's really phenomenal going from 2013 where you were at an $8.5 million deficit to this $3.5 million fund balance in general fund. Last thing I want to touch on from the financial statements is on page 75. We did do a single audit, which what that means is you guys receive federal funds in excess of $750,000. So you do require a federal single audit to review those funds. We didn't find any issues in our audit. We tested the school lunch program, which is your biggest federal funding source. The reason why this is a little bit important this year is you were only over that threshold by $10,000. So depending on how that funding goes going forward, you may not even require a single audit in future years. So that's all I have from the financial statement standpoint. I've got a couple letters that I just want to briefly go over. The first one is going to be the single space letter. That's what we would call the management letter. There's nothing in here that would be like a process improvement standpoint or any issues. The only comment we made in there is you guys do have a 2015 capital projects fund. As that gets substantially complete, it wasn't quite there when we were doing the audit, but as that is completely wrapped up, we will be required to do a 120-day audit, which basically just means we review the remaining expenditures that happened within the fund, and then we report that to the state. Additionally, we have one other letter, which is called our governance letter. We're required at the completion of our audit to issue this letter to the board. There are no issues within the letter, but I will go through a couple of quick points here. The main one being in the middle of the second page, where we talk about estimates that are used within the financial statements. Nothing of real significance here, but we do make note of the net pension liability. That's probably the biggest one. And we saw on the one page back in the financial statement footnotes where that number can easily fluctuate $30 million based on the rate of return that's being used. But again, that is the same rate of return that's being used for all districts and all ISDs. The remaining estimates are nothing really of too much significance, but there is an estimate for employee compensated absences, and there is an estimate on the useful lives of fixed assets. point 2, I will just let you guys know there were no difficulties in the performance of our audit. Point number 3, there were no corrected or uncorrected misstatements. There were no disagreements with management, and we did receive a representation letter from management at the completion of the audit, basically stating that we were provided everything we needed to complete our audit. So all in all, very good report, and nothing of concern that we came across. Once again, I just want to really thank Dr. Gray and all their hard work to get us to this point, because Brighton's a real fun audit to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by the board?
So the disaster recovery plan. This is,
Oh, sorry.
the disaster recovery plan that was in one of the memos, just, it seemed to be related to hardware failures. Is that just boilerplate, or is that something?
I'm trying to see where memo-wise that was at, but the big thing on the disaster recovery plan, and I don't believe that's in our comment, is what in our letter either, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Was it this letter?
Oh. You go through on that? Sorry about that. But disaster recovery plan, I'd have to go back and look at it, and I had here actually. It is a boilerplate. The biggest thing really is there that if there was an issue, are the policies, procedures in place to really cover and make sure that that's something that is going to be able to recover quickly. So this is a complete boilerplate, just looking at it. But no, and all it really means is that there's not a formal disaster recovery plan in place, and these are some recommendations to get there. So, but it's not where we identified any issues within the audit where, it was causing any sort of issues today. It's a preventative comment. So.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Any other questions? Mr. Condon?
Yes, this pension liability continues to
Right.
grow. They're assessing this throughout the entire state, and they're putting it on the school district's books.
Yep.
So it takes it off the state's books.
It's always been there for the state. You guys have always paid your mixers. When those bills come in, you guys have always made those payments. What it was, and I didn't emphasize it, we were also required with it to add 2 additional RSI pages. And really what it was, to bring attention to the public and to school boards that there is an issue out there. There's nothing you can do about it. That 22, 23, whatever odd number of year plan that it's going to be, you guys are going to get your bills and you're going to pay exactly what they say. There's no exactly what they say to pay. There's no early payoff or anything like that. And nothing's really changed from 3 years ago when that net pension liability wasn't on the financial statements. What they did require us to do was put the actual actuarial number for that. And if you go to page 55, we have page 55 and 56, which provide a little bit of illustrations on how big of an issue it was. And it's more for shock value than it is for anything. They're accurate numbers, but they're big numbers. So if you look at page 55, this will be a 10-year schedule at some point. We only have 3 years worth of data right now. If you look at 16, this is where we have a $98 million net pension liability. Covered payroll during that same period for Brighton was $34 million. So that's 288% of Brighton's annual covered payroll, or what the covered payroll was for that period. And I think that's what they're trying to get at, was it's a big deal. And prior to 3 years ago, people were unaware of how big a deal it really was. And if you look at that number, that 63.27% at the bottom of that table, that's no number related to Brighton. That's the number for the ORS program as a whole. If you were to look back on page 45, where we showed that $67 billion issue, it's a plan that right now is funded at 63.27%. We want that number to be 100% so that that net pension liability is gone. And if you look from 14, it started out at 66% funding, dropped to 63.17, and then it went up 0.1% to 63.27. So it's not really going down like they would have planned.
No, but that would falsify somebody's books at the government level. If they continue to move this, where's the money? So we're liable for this money that continues. It seems to be increasing for us.
It's increasing for all.
So they're moving.
It's an actuarial-based number that the ORS gets. So the number.
We owe it though.
Yes.
How are we ever going to pay it? And then the other thing is the state government, and if they move it over to us, and they're not showing it on their books, so we're showing it.
Right, I mean.
And so that means the state budget's out of whack. Because they shifted it to us. Just thinking out loud, sorry.
Yep. But yes, you're right, it's a big issue, and you guys do make payments on it.
I don't like being right though. Just a technician.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you again for coming in, we appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff. Tonight we also have a special presentation from our curriculum department, so I'll kick it over to Dr. Sir.
Thank you. I'm actually going to ask Dr. Chesney if he would introduce our guests. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
We have a very special presentation tonight, a friend of ours, and lots of friends actually here this evening. So Dr. Chesney, why don't you start, and I'll fill in as we go.
Okay.
Okay?
So what this is about is some wonderful awards that were recently won by Brighton area schools. And this is associated with the Michigan Design Prize. And what this design challenge was, it was a master challenge to design a physical product to help people safely enjoy Michigan winters. And I don't know, should I jump into the prizes or should I let you give some background? And I know you have a very nice presentation or a video put together. Do you want to do that first and then I'll go into the individuals?
Sure. Maybe I can just explain a little bit about the prizes, in general, the mission, and I'd love to share a video, which no one's really seen yet.
That
we
we
want
want.
to premiere that tonight, and then we can maybe get more formal into it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Very good.
Great. So I'm honored to be here. I don't spend a lot of time in board meetings. My kids went through a big school district due south on US 23, and I remember what those were like. So thank you for allowing me to come into your space tonight. So my name is Jeff DeBoer. I'm chairman of the Michigan Design Council. I'm also a professional industrial designer. I own one of the oldest industrial design firms in the country, and we're located in Commerce Township, of all things. We are the oldest operating design firm in Detroit. So real quickly, a couple years ago, we met with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the governor's office, specifically trying to put some meat behind the governor's talent acquisition program for the state to get us back on our feet. Out of that came an idea for this thing we have come to know as the Michigan Design Council. Last year I formally converted that to a 501c3. It's a Michigan nonprofit organization. The mission of the Michigan Design Council is to, I would say, create international awareness of the design legacy of Michigan, which is pretty substantial, and I'll give you a couple details. But it's also to bring creative learning, project-based learning, and design thinking skills into the classroom, K through 12 and collegiate level. Some people call this STEAM. I'm not crazy about acronyms. I'm just about doing the right thing. So that's what we're trying to do. So the big kind of keystone initiative that we do each year now is called the Michigan Design Prize. There's nothing else like it in the nation. There's actually nothing like the Michigan Design Council in the nation. This is truly unique. And it's really founded in some amazing stats. So I don't know if anybody knows what an industrial designer is, but industrial design is the profession that's right at the intersection of technology and art. It's not just technology, it's not just art, it's those two things crashing together. It's creating products that work great and make our lives better, but it's also products that make our lives very fulfilling. beautiful things. We need to be surrounded by beauty. That's what makes us human, right? So in Michigan, we have more industrial designers than any other state in the country. That's more than New York. That's more than California. This is truly amazing. On average, industrial designers, and we have 4,500 give or take, industrial designers in Michigan make about $10,000 more a year than their peers in any other state in the country. And it's a good news, bad news story, because, and this really affects me personally because I employ industrial designers. Industrial designers in Michigan are all fully employed right now. And actually, I'm fighting with my peers in industry, people like General Motors and Ford for creative talent. We have a shortage. So there's a real need statewide to drive the economy, to get more creative talent trained in our state. And it's really, it's what's going to drive our economy forward. And I've met with the governor a couple of times. He's a huge believer in this program. And he really got it right away. I mean, he basically said, industrial design is the first piece of the creative puzzle of the supply chain that makes our manufacturing economy run. That's what it's all about. We're right at the beginning. Every industrial designer in Michigan creates about 8 more jobs. That's a small city, if you do the math. That's about 32,000 people. That's huge. So this is a big deal. It's a real big deal, and we feel really, really strongly about bringing creative problem solving, creative skills, drawing, CAD, model building, and just open design thinking and creative problem solving into K through 12. So our council has been going out over the last several years, going into schools, going into classrooms, doing demonstrations, how to draw, how to think, how to create, how to take a really ill-formed idea and challenge, like make people enjoy Michigan winters, which is not an easy thing to do, and not just design a product, but figure out what the problem is. That's what design thinking is all about. I love your tagline, learning for life. We're trying to teach kids how to learn for life, how to create for life. So we launched the Michigan Design Prize. First year was an experiment. Last year was our second year, or this year. It was like a tidal wave washing over us. Participation just was order of magnitude greater. The other thing that's unique is for finalists that are selected, the award is not monetary. We do have some amazing bling, which we're going to share in a minute, but the award is mentoring. We thought the biggest gift we could give was pairing students with professional industrial designers. So literally designers are giving an entire day, sometimes renting other facilities, and putting our kids on in hyperdrive, kind of creative hyperdrive, problem solving. And these have been transformational events. We've got parents texting us during these sessions, telling us that their kids' lives have been changed in that period. This is really, really powerful. And I guess our feeling, and I'm not a formal educator, but when something's working, I think I can tell when it's working. This is just the way it should be. This is just the way kids should learn. Kids always learn better when they're tackling a real problem. It's that simple. So I'm going to share a video. So the 21st of October, this is very recent. See if we can get this thing running. For the 2017 cycle, we had 11 finalists that were mentored. 2 of the banners that represent the mentoring process are back here, Isabel and Elliot. And we'll call them out in a little bit. But we actually rented the Museum of Art in Ann Arbor, which is quite fabulous. If you've ever been there, it's sort of awe-inspiring. And I think the kids and families that came in there were sort of blown away when they walked in and saw what happened. And the award ceremony unfolded. We had representatives from the state of Michigan there that were super excited, and teachers, parents, administrators. So let me just show you this video real quick and see if we can give you a sense of what happened.
One of the biggest so amazing. It's such a privilege.
So I'm so proud that Brighton schools participated. That was a really neat event. You guys should be really proud of yourselves. You have no idea how many other students your kids were up against. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds from all over the state. And the judging was done on the quality of their creative thinking. Not on how well they rendered, not on how well they built models. That all came through the mentoring process. So hopefully you feel very proud of that, and I don't know if you want to do some specific.
I would like to cover some specifics.
Yeah.
If that's all right.
Because I know some of the kids are here.
Yes. So remember, rewinding a little bit, the design challenge was to design a physical product to help people safely enjoy the Michigan winter. And we are very proud. You might have recognized some of those faces in the video because they're local rock stars. They're rock stars from Brighton area schools. And we have the students who won grand prizes were Smith Christie, who's a kindergartner from Spencer. We have Isabel Grono, who's a third grader at Horning. We have Cecilia Pruski, who's a fourth grader at Hawkins. And we have Elliot Bukup, who's a fourth grader at Hawkins. If you're here, could you stand up, please, for our applause? And so my understanding was they were given this challenge and they worked with some wonderful teachers, and specifically some of the teachers who were deeply involved were Diane Camblin and Tracy Richards and Jillian McColgan and Kim Lewicki, working on these projects. And they worked with the students and just did this wonderful job working with them on a regular basis. The students came up with concepts and they worked with industrial designers, and if you look back at these are a couple of the banners that actually came from the competition. So they display a couple of the designs, and I know Elliot, I see yours, and who's idea was the cocoon?
Isabel.
Isabel. So that was Isabel's idea. So those are definitely worth taking a look at to see how those look. So we owe a lot of congratulations to the teachers who were involved in this project as well. And then also taking this to the next level. So we have these wonderful genius students who did this amazing design work and this amazing industrial design, this conceptual design. And at the level of the students being involved and the teachers supporting and the principals supporting is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I'm also very pleased to tell Brighton area schools, or to put this award. You saw those beautiful, beautiful trophies. And this is this was only awarded to one school district in the state, and this is the Governor's Award. And it's given to Brighton area schools for the building design science, building industrial design into our curriculum. And I think that it's just pretty phenomenal that we as a school district were recognized for having significant contribution and significant curriculum around design. And the challenge that I leave us with is I looked at this beautiful trophy, and it was, I think it's absolutely extraordinary. And the question that I have about this trophy is this a trophy that we want at the finish line, or is it a trophy that marks the beginning? And I think I would hope that we would mark the beginning of industrial design in Brighton area schools, and building this into our curriculum as a starting point rather and just to bake it into the DNA of our curriculum wherever we possibly can. And I'm in complete agreement that it's all about the context that you're applying the science and the art to that makes education very, very interesting. So thank you for your support.
Only thing I would add is I think we had a couple teachers that came to support the kids and maybe worked with you last year that we did not mention. Could you stand if you were taught one of the young people? You know, Dawn Strait is here. No, say it again.
Marilyn Norris.
Marilyn Norris. Thank you for coming this evening and supporting your students. Did I get everybody that came? Parents, did you stand up? Because I know you did a lot of work for your kids. Moms and dads. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Surgan. The only other thing we have is please look at your emails. Board members, as Star has sent you a poll to give us some dates for the board visioning workshop in January. So if you don't see it, we'll ever shoot it out again, but that'll give you some dates that we can consolidate into one, and then we can tackle our visioning for the 2018-19 school year. And that's all I have on my report.
Thank you. If those of you that came for this particular presentation, you're certainly more than welcome to leave. We welcome you to stay, but you are also welcome to leave if you wish. So this brings us to the Board of Education bulletins. Do any members of the board have any bulletins or announcements they'd like to share? Mr. Stahl.
Just a short announcement, I did attend the Michigan Association of School Board Delegate Assembly. It was the largest assembly they've had to date, and they anticipate it to almost double by next year. And we went over before, it's kind of like our NEOLA policies. It's a policy by which they operate, and we went through and put it underneath one. The only one we had any contention with, and it will be reviewed and then sent out to us, was how the state board members are appointed / elected. It was that wording that got quite a few people to stand up and discuss it, and what they're asking for is to be more pointed as to what it is that they believe they should be appointed or elected or a combination. They want more information. So that's coming forward. When I get it, I'll share it.
Thank you. And thanks again for attending on behalf of the board. Appreciate it. Any other bulletins this evening? Okay. That moves us into for action. Item A, minutes of October 23rd, 2017. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Moved.
Support. Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? One abstention. 601, please. Item B, student handbook revisions. Do we have a motion to approve the student handbook revisions as presented to us this evening?
Moved. Support.
Moved by Mr. Trombley, supported by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
I have a couple of questions. There were a couple of things in the multi-policy that looked like they were maybe not organized the way we intended, or maybe had some other typos that unfortunately have substantive issues. I noticed on page 20, there was it's the discussion of disciplinary options for certain issues with the students and for criminal sexual conduct. There was I think it refers to suspension twice, and one of those should be expulsion.
Page 20, is that for your reference?
Yes. It was page 20 in the policy, I'm sorry, not page 20 of the board package.
Page 63 in the pack.
Thank you.
And the second word should be long-term suspension.
Well, looking at the way it's worded for all of the other sections, should have been, but I'm not entirely sure, so I would ask Dr. Gray if we can clarify that before it's approved and put into play.
If we can do that.
Thank you. The other one was on page 28 of the policy, so that is board package page 71. Right there in the middle of the page, right under rights and responsibilities, you've got that first paragraph there that there is an odd spacing. So I've got users, comma, and it looks like we're missing some words there. So I can't tell what exactly it is we are expecting to have happen there.
I think the formatting's off, so we gotta push the formatting to the left.
And when you get to the bottom of that page, we start seeing a bunch of first person. I'm sorry, it's on the next page, 29. And I think we are trying to start a copy of the acceptable use policy form that either the student or the parents are going to execute, but that's not clear, so it looks like our policy is, I have read the acceptable user policy.
Yeah, it should be on its own page.
Yep.
So it's another, I'll draw a line and that'll be a formatting issue.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable, would you like this, do you want to make a motion to table, or?
Yes, I would make a motion to table, because I think these are substantive enough that they should be corrected
Okay.
before we approve it. That's my opinion, at least.
So we have to amend the first motion. Do we have,
Or I can retract.
however you want to retract it, is that?
Sure.
Do we have a motion to retract?
Yes.
Do we have support? Okay. So Mr. Trombley is retracting the original motion, supported by Mr. Conley, and then a new motion by Ms. Reed. Do we have support? Support by Mr. Myers to table this for the November 27th, the next board meeting.
With the proper revisions.
With the proper revisions, correct. That
Yes, that's. the
capture
motion
it?
I would make.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the current motion to table? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? 7-0. Okay, item C, process for purchase of services. Do we have a motion to approve the process for purchase of services?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Chesney, supported by Mr. Stahl. Any discussion?
I do have a question on this, and I think this was that, and Dr. Gray, correct me if I'm wrong, but you took feedback on this and then put the wording based upon the feedback that you have. And the question that I have, on the second line, it says cost exceeding 100K will be bid using an RFP process up to a 5-year period. What is up to a 5-year period modifying?
It means within every 5-year period, anything over $100,000 will be bid.
Okay.
If you wanted to amend it, instead of up to, put within, you could do that as well, but at the last meeting, up to was the one recommended, that's what we took it from. So you could change up to within if you chose, if you wanted to amend your motion.
If I could ask a question, does that mean that the total amount expended on the contract would be $100,000 within the 5-year term?
No, it's a yearly basis. Annual contract.
So what is the 5 years touching on?
So if it's 2020 today, let's say, by 2025, any contract over $100,000 would be rebid within that 5-year period.
I see, okay.
We wouldn't have a contract that would extend beyond
5 years.
This goes back to what is it not? Would it read more clearly if it said be it resolved that beginning July 1st, 2018, within a 5-year period, all purchase services having an annual cost exceeding 100K will be bid using an RFP process. Just the question is what is that talking about with the up to 5-year? And it gets back to Ms. Reed's question too, that everything beginning in July 1st, 2018, within 5 years, all purchase services having annual costs. Think, is that what this is intended to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think when we discussed the draft last time, the language we had at the time was, we had a 3 to 5 year window, and we felt that that might be too restrictive. And so rather than having a floor of 3 years, we decided that we would change to just keep it open up to 5 years, and then any contract that fell within that 5 year range. So that's where the language was tweaked, was to eliminate the floor of 3 years and just
Because
basically.
we could bid something every year.
Right, exactly.
We chose.
And then that gave the administration flexibility if there were ways to create greater cost savings if the contract fell within any part of that, up to 5 years, not necessarily just a 3 to 5 year window. That was the rationale.
But within 5 years still states that, right? Is that contrary to up to 5 years?
Well, I think that I didn't write down what the modified version you read.
I think the concern that I would have with this language is it basically says, beginning as of July 1, 2018, within 5 years. If you start off the modifier within 5 years, it's just a fixed, it's not a rolling policy that would extend beyond the 5 years. You're just basically starting in December 2018 and just saying, as of that point in time, within 5 years, if there is a contract that fits that criteria, it would have to be subject to this policy. I think the way we were trying to have it worded was that by putting that qualifier later in the sentence, it was a rolling process that would continue indefinitely into the future. Does that make sense?
It does, but then does, instead of within, should it be within every 5 years?
That would be the way I would word it.
Okay.
Well,
Just one member of the board.
but are we trying to create a line in the sand after which our expectation as a board is that all contracts that have a value of $100,000 or more will have had an RFP? Or is it more, so the rolling period would be more like for any service with a value of, with a contracted value of $100,000 or more will have been RFP'd within the prior 5 years. Is that
At least
Is that
once.
more what we're,
Yes.
so we'll
I
go.
think the second.
Okay. That makes sense. But I don't think that's what we have written.
Who wrote this?
This was taken off of the amended piece that you gave us last time and typed up by Star.
I guess I don't have a problem if we want to table just to make sure that everyone's comfortable with the language, that it says what the intent of the policy is. I mean, I certainly have a problem with that. I think we all want to be clear that the policy is as we anticipate adopting. So if board members are uncomfortable with it as written, I would support tabling it until the next meeting. There's no sense of urgency in having to make that decision tonight.
Any other thoughts? Can I, you repeat how you interpret
That beginning July 1st, 2018, for all purchased services, the value of which exceeds $100,000, we will ensure that that contract has been RFP'd within a 5-year period.
And I think you could just eliminate up to and put within, and you'd have it covered. Because within could mean we could bid it every year. Within gives you a qualifier at the end of the 5 year that it had to be done. So I think if you eliminated up to and added one word of within, I think you'd be exactly where you want to be.
So in other words, nobody's going to be under contract for more than a 5 year period without being RFP.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
So you could amend the motion to eliminate up to and add within if you chose.
I would like to move that we amend the motion to change up to within.
Second?
So, motion presented by Dr. Chesney to remove up to and replace with within, supported by Ms. Reed. Any discussion, further discussion? Mr. Conley.
I'd just like to keep in mind for it's not a necessary thing to do unless it's something to put in place as that additional safeguard. This process falls under other state rules and regulations and laws, and then obviously the board will have control here as well. So I'm going to support this, but I'll tell you there's no reason to have to change what we've done in the past. As we go forward, we'll get maybe better. There's nothing even done wrong with why this is being adopted. So the safeguards that were already there are there with or without the motion. They're in place. Thank you.
Mr. Stahl, I'd like to propose this to Dr. Gray. Does this handcuff you or anything like that? And then
No.
dates, shape, or form?
No, as a finance committee, we worked pretty hard on this. I think once we had the discussion on, and I think Mr. Conley was just kind of alluding to that, and Mr. Meyer did as well, on what our actual process is. I think people were very comfortable with it. I think what this is a reminder, is what it is. And it's a reminder for myself, a reminder for Dr. Gistinger, who follows, and whoever follows Dr. Gistinger, and whoever follows me. And it's good business. We do it anyways. I would assume most superintendents and assistant superintendents of finance would do it anyways. But this at least gives the board that tick mark or reminder of hey, we probably should go up a bit on this again. Keeps everybody working on the same path.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would additionally add that this is best practice. This is doing our due diligence as a board and as a district to make sure that we're in the best position from a service contract as we possibly can be. And again, Mr. Conley's point, it's not that we've been doing anything wrong necessarily, it's more of a due diligence practice on our end to get the best services at the best rates as we possibly can.
And brought to us every every project,
Multiple times.
every scope. So I'm very confident with this group.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
You have an amended motion. You have an amended motion.
I'm sorry. Yes. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. And that closes out for action and takes us into for future action. Item A, Board Policy 7510 and accompanying fees, charts, and administrative guidelines. Ms. Reed.
Yes, the Facilities Committee has been working on some updates to the Board Policy 7510 and then the related documents and administrative procedures around the use of the school district's facilities. We had a meeting earlier this week and discussed some additional changes that we would like to make to our draft for the procedures documents. We are confident that we'll be able to put the draft in front of the board at our next meeting this month. So for future action one more time, and then for action in December.
Okay, great.
The only thing I'd like to call the attention to, maybe covered in the meeting, but back on page 85, under BCPA camp rental, there shouldn't be a $150 charge under item A.
There should or shouldn't?
Shouldn't.
Okay.
That's the fee chart.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, great. Thank you for moving this forward to the Finance Committee. I know it's been a work in progress. Item B, Dr. Gray.
Yeah, we'd ask in a couple of weeks that you accept the donation of $1,500 to the BHS robotics team and use for competitions and supplies. This is per our board policy 7230. All gifts, grants, and requests having a value of more than $1,000, and we would ask that you accept this in appreciation for the donation from Bresco LLC as presented.
Who is Bresco LLC?
I have no idea.
Okay. Is anybody?
Somebody who likes robotics.
Fair. It's always good news, but it's always interesting to know.
Yeah, we can.
Robotics topic is kind of good. Sometimes the donations don't come before us because they're monetary. On Saturday last week, Mr. Leonfelter opened up this very exclusive card collection to the Brighton area schools. And they had a fundraiser for the robotics team. I hadn't heard the numbers, but historical years gone by, they've done very well with their fundraising. It's important to get the robotics. It was a very well operation. Students ran the whole thing again. It's great. And so Mr. Trump there. Very well attended. So, thank you.
Item C, Dr. Gray.
As we typically do at this time each particular year, we will be recommending that you open a limited school of choice offering for grades 1 through 12. The district continues to deliver one of the most comprehensive educational programs in the state, and students consistently are recognized for their academics, athletics, fine arts, and leadership performance. Here's their facts and statistics. The school of choice program will be advertised via media releases, the district website, and my Friday letter. The limited school of choice program will accept applications for students in grades 1 through 12. If applications exceed the allotted spaces, the district will conduct a random draw. Preference will be given to those families who currently have a student enrolled. One thing to remember about limited school of choice, when you do limited school of choice, the number you have to accept is 1. So for each grade, grades 1 through 12, if we had 1 open seat, we could select 1 student. We never bring a number of students in that overload a class at this particular time. Remember, this is also tied to a 10% piece of the funding regulation, as we've already counted the 90% piece of our funding regulation. This at times fills open slots, at times we don't select any, or we select just the 1, and that happens quite often.
Dr. Chesney.
Could you remind me again, Dr. Gray, please, the difference between unlimited at the beginning of the school year versus limited?
Sure. So I'll start with limited. Limited, as I just kind of talked about, is typically a very short window, typically a couple of weeks. We've received a slew of phone calls, I'd say in the last week and a half to 2 weeks, because most districts are starting to go through this process. Again, we will take a look at all of our classrooms out there, take a look at class size, because it's very important to us, and take a look at if there are any options for us to accept any kids in these grades. Remember, as we say grades 1 through 12, that would be 12 kids that we would have to take, and you could take up to 1,000 if you had seats, but we typically don't have that situation. Unlimited school of choice is usually a time frame that we open up at the beginning of June, and we run it June, July, and August into the first week of September of school. The difference between limited and unlimited is there's qualifying factors for a student to be to come into a school system under school of choice, and there's regulations, such as if you're suspended in the last 2 years, you can't come. If you have this or that, there are very specific guidelines. You have to be in a particular county that touches ours, or an ISD that touches ours, or you have to go through a 105C agreement, which is very rare. So the difference is if they meet the qualifications under unlimited, you have to take them. With limited, you don't.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Dr. Gray, currently, what is our school of choice enrollment?
Just under 700.
From last year,
It's hovering about the same. Percentage-wise, it's lower based on the fact that our actual enrollment in district went up significantly this year.
And how are we looking as far as capacity in each of our buildings, particularly in our elementary school buildings?
So if you recall, I think you were here, maybe not, we redistricted about 7 years ago. So Back when we had to close Limbaum and Miller was repurposed, we redrew the lines in the district. And what we took a look at with a program was which neighborhoods were aging out, which neighborhoods looked like they were rolling over. Because all of our elementary buildings have a capacity of about 650 kids. Now, I would think that would be packed to the gills, and we would never put 650 in a building. But we took a look at them. We had a large disparity between our buildings. We had, back then, 7 years ago, Horning at almost 600, and we had Spencer at about 350. So when we redrew the lines, we were very careful to take a look at neighborhoods to include in certain areas that we knew would help balance our schools. An ideal number for us at all of our elementary buildings are about 500. If we had 500, 500, 500, 500, that would be a great number for us. We're pretty much there. Horning's still a little bit higher. We have a big 4th grade that's transitioning out. And all the rest are hovering right around that 500 mark to 515-ish. So the redistricting has worked very well to balance the different buildings. We take a look at it each year to see if there's something we have to do to tweak it. Presently, I would say we don't have to. I would say 2 or 3 years from now, as neighborhoods again age out, there could be an opportunity that we'd have to take a look at redrawing those lines.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just have one question. Dr. Gray, you mentioned with the limited school of choice that we have to accept one for the grades for which it's opened up. And you mentioned so if we had first through 12, we'd have 12 slots. We'd have to. Can you limit the grades? Can you say we're going to do a limited school of choice, but it's only going to be for 5 through 12?
That's why you don't see kindergarten.
Okay. And
so kindergarten right now we're full, and so we have a couple of seats, but we also have to prepare for move-ins because there could be an opportunity second semester where we have 5 or 6 families move in. They might have 5 kindergarten students, so we have to hold a certain number of slots. And we predict those slots based on about a 3 to 5 year average of what we've seen. We write those numbers down every year, and it gives us a predictor to be able to say, I have 6 slots open. Typically, I'm in the 3 to 6 range. I probably shouldn't offer kindergarten up right now. And then we look across the other 4 buildings, especially at the elementary level, because that seems to be where it's the most difficult, because you have a finite number in a class with a particular teacher every hour, whereas when you get to multi, you have class transitions, Scranton class transitions, and the high school class transitions. So it's kindergarten, typically it's kindergarten, 1st grade that are our most difficult, sometimes JK, that's why I don't see JK on here either, because we're full. Last year it was 3rd grade that we were really full at, so we wouldn't take limited at a 3rd grade. So we pretty much scan all of our grade levels every year. We look for the predictor in terms of what we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years of move-ins over time. We bumped that a little bit as the economy got better and things have started to build out in Brighton, whether it be, I've seen a lot of construction in some of the neighborhoods. U of M facility going in gives us a predictor that there could be some more move-ins, so we're adjusting that accordingly to what we think might be an increase in terms of our move-ins.
Thank you. Great. That moves us to board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports this evening? Finance committee.
Just a quick summary, facility subcommittee. We did look over the facility renewal plan. Dr. Gregg, Mr. Jacob is currently working on getting that report to us. They're going to build this out. Main stadium wall is something we talked about again. We're looking at some more ways of fixing that wall. And as you know, board policy 7510 was discussed, and we had a little discussion about the discussion. That's it.
Yes. Mr. Stahl, are we going to start any kind of legal action in the wall as far as construction?
It wasn't discussed this last time. Maybe we just discussed it in the past at the time.
All the things. Okay. So it's time for discussion. Thank you.
Any other board committee reports?
I had some information that the LASA sent me out. I'd like to pass it out to everyone. That'd be all right.
Yep.
flip through it where it says hot jobs. And the next page it talks about high demand, high wage careers. There's a lot of split information in the packet that Kelly has sent to us. And talks about the number of job openings, different careers, managers, talks about the degree requirements. It's kind of like this page. And in that, I mean, right up front, we talked about where we should be gearing for our students to help them be successful in the fields, so be it in trades, or be it with a bachelor's degree, 4-year degree, or even 2-year degrees, or additional training after high school. It's an eye-opening kind of thing here. For instance, we're really needing machinery people, really needing general operations managers, which is a 4-year degree. 106 openings. So we have one down here. Registered nurses, 394. This is an annual job opening. So I think it's important as board members that we look at these numbers, and they're out there. And I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to see them. I believe they're pretty accurate. But it does help us, myself as a technician in the trades, there are openings and things that I know a lot about. Here's machinists. Let's say 1,279 openings. Am I missing something? Okay, 1,279 openings. And Mrs. Parks here that talks about the her industry and teaching the kids how to I saw the other day they were baking pies and cakes and things, and they're very high demand in the food service. So I think they need to be open-minded. Down here, plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters. There's 279 openings. And we have carpenters, which we don't have any classes, by the way. We don't have any classes. Carpenters, there's 393 annual openings. I think it's pretty neat stuff. And here's the computer one too, which we're also facing, we all face it. There's 601 openings, and it requires some college, no degree, or 2-year school as well. So high school, properly trained coming out of high school, they can go to work. And it says here $45,000 a year to start. Not too bad.
So what I would suggest, and I think this plays very well into our board visioning workshop in January. So this is a good document, I think, for all of us to read in preparation for some of that conversation in January. So
I think it's good. And we should take this computer to put together for us. It's a nice kind of compilation of usable information. There's some other things that we can ask more questions. We'll see what my questions were. You may want to add to them, or if there's any wide open for a meeting. We said I'd be glad to sit with us and discuss it, the things that they've learned. That's my whole idea with this, was to share kind of a county-wide, what do they know, what do we know, and we can all go forward with their knowledge.
So let's plan on having some more deeper discussion in the visioning workshop in January. Okay, that brings us to the second call to the public. If anyone wishes to address the board during the second call, please come up to the podium. Same rules apply as earlier.